What if everything you've been told about women's sexuality is backwards? What if the best sex of your life is waiting on the other side of menopause?
Today, we're talking about vaginas that feel like they're filled with razor blades and how to turn that horror story into a happy ending. Welcome to Guts and Glamour, the podcast where we say the quiet parts loud. I'm Tessa Rourke.
And I'm Morgan Reeves. Tessa, I don't think I've ever heard such a raw, unfiltered conversation about menopause as what Halle Berry just shared with Trevor Noah.
Bloody hell, Morgan. When Halle Berry, is sitting there telling Trevor Noah that her vagina was cracking like the San Andreas fault during sex, that's a watershed moment in broadcasting. She could have sat there looking gorgeous and mysterious, but instead, she went full disclosure on vaginal atrophy.
The medical misdiagnosis aspect was particularly alarming. A renowned specialist told her she had herpes instead of recognizing symptoms of perimenopause, and she's Halle Berry, with access to the best healthcare money can buy.
That doctor should be selling used cars, not peering into women's bits. If Halle Berry can't get proper diagnosis, what hope does Karen from Kansas have? This is beyond incompetence. It's a bloody conspiracy of silence.
What struck me was how she mentioned only 13% of doctors understand the menopausal body, and it's just one chapter in medical school. That's deeply concerning when we consider that every woman who lives long enough will experience this transition.
And they know we stop bleeding eventually. It's not like menopause is some rare condition that affects 3 women in Tasmania. It's half the bloody population. This isn't rocket science. It's basic plumbing.
I'd like to introduce something I'm calling the intimacy renovation. Like any good home project, there are distinct phases to navigating these changes.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. So my vagina is basically a fixer-upper with good bones, but needs updating.
Laughs. Essentially, yes, phase 1 is the demolition phase, acknowledging what's no longer working. For Halle, it was recognizing that pain during intercourse wasn't normal.
Right. When your body starts sending you eviction notices, it's time to read the fine print. My trainer always says, pain isn't weakness leaving the body, it's your body screaming that something's wrong. Same goes for your lady garage.
Lady garage? Laughs. That's colorful. Phase 2 is the blueprint conversation, how to talk to partners about changing needs.
Halle nailed this one. Her story about the mate who almost got divorced because his wife couldn't tell him sex hurt. That's happening in bedrooms everywhere. People are ending marriages because they can't say, your penis feels like sandpaper right now.
The communication disconnect is staggering. I'd argue that perimenopause might actually be the first time many women feel entitled to advocate for their pleasure. Before that, too many are just performing what they think sex should be.
The great bedroom pretending. I've got mates who faked orgasms for so long they should have BAFTA awards on their nightstands. And now they're hitting perimenopause and thinking, I've got maybe 30 good years left. Am I really going to spend them performing like a circus seal?
That brings us to phase 3, the technology integration. Halle mentioned products like her Intimacy Gel and something called a V-Fit device that uses red light therapy to rebuild vaginal walls. It's fascinating how technology is finally being developed specifically for women's intimate health.
Look, I'm all for gadgets, but can we take a moment to appreciate that women are shoving lightsabers up their bits to rebuild their vaginas? If men needed dick lasers to keep shagging, they'd be standard issue at birth.
Struggling not to laugh. That's not exactly how I would describe it, but your point about gendered healthcare innovation is valid. Though I'm curious about this V-Fit device. It sounds promising.
I'll be your guinea pig. In fact, let's do a vagina renovation special where I test all these products and report back. I've got no shame. I'll tell you if my bits feel like a 20-year-old's afterward.
Laughing. I genuinely can't tell if you're joking, but I would absolutely support that journalistic endeavor. The final phase is the grand reopening, celebrating new forms of pleasure and connection.
I love that. Grand reopening under new management. Your vagina's not closed for business. It's just rebranding.
Exactly. And what Halle said about her glycan age being 40 while her chronological age is 58, that's not just about appearance. It's about embracing that this phase of life can include vibrant sexuality.
Here's what I think is revolutionary about what Halle said. She's not just talking about maintaining sex through menopause like it's some chore like flossing your teeth. She's saying the sex is better now, that at 58, she's having the best sex of her life.
It challenges everything we're taught about female sexuality peaking early. I've been thinking a lot about what you said last week about pressure on young women to be sexually adventurous before they even know their own bodies.
Young women are out there trying to do Olympic-level sexual gymnastics when they haven't even found their own clitoris. Maybe sexual prime isn't about how tight your abs are. Maybe it's about finally knowing what the hell you want and not being afraid to ask for it.
That's profoundly true, and it aligns with research showing women in their 40s and 50s report higher sexual satisfaction despite physical changes. The mental and emotional components, confidence, self-knowledge, communication, outweigh the physical challenges.
You know what's wild? The same blokes who'll pop a blue pill without question act like women using lubricant is somehow cheating. Like women aren't supposed to need assistance, just inspiration.
That's where the blueprint conversation becomes crucial. Perhaps something like, "My body is changing in ways that are normal and natural. Here's what would make intimacy more comfortable and pleasurable for me."
Or if you're me, listen mate, unless you want me comparing sex with you to scraping my knee on concrete, grab that bottle of lube and let's make this work for both of us.
Laughs. Your directness is actually perfect. Now, can we talk about Halle's intimacy gel? Because there's a significant difference between drugstore lubricants and products formulated specifically for vaginal tissue.
What kills me is how she said nobody's embarrassed buying Viagra. But women are throwing 14 other items in their basket to hide the lube. We need to start a movement. Loud and proud Lube Purchase Day. Just stroll up to the counter with nothing but lube and maintain aggressive eye contact with the cashier.
Laughing, I can see the hashtag now, but there's something profound in what she said about redefinition. That society tells women after childbearing years, we're done, when in reality, we're entering what could be our most authentic phase.
And that's the real kicker. We've been sold the biggest lie of all, that our value expires with our eggs. That worth is tied to fertility, not to the wisdom we've earned by surviving in these bodies for decades.
What if we reframed menopause not as an ending, but as a graduation? You've completed the reproductive phase of life. Congratulations. Now you get to focus entirely on pleasure and purpose.
Menopause, the graduation ceremony nobody attended. I like that. Instead of hot flashes, call them power surges. Instead of mood swings, call them emotional range exercises.
Laughs. Exactly. And back to Halle's point about her place in society as a Black woman. There's an intersectional element to aging that can't be ignored. Women of color face additional barriers to proper health care.
The medical system is playing life on expert mode if you're not a white bloke. Black women's pain gets ignored, then they're told they're strong for enduring what should have been treated. It's medical gaslighting with a side of racist patronising.
At the risk of getting too personal, I've started thinking about my own journey toward perimenopause. As someone who's built a career partly on athletic performance, I'm confronting my changing relationship with my body.
You know what scares me? Not the physical changes. I can handle pain, I've played through injuries. It's the invisibility. Halle talked about being reduced to her looks for decades, and I'm wondering what happens when you're not the hot one anymore. Where does the power shift?
That's remarkably vulnerable, Tessa. I think the power shifts inward. Halle found purpose in becoming a voice for women in this phase. She's redefining influence beyond appearance.
Maybe that's the real renovation, not just our bits, but our entire bloody self-concept. Finding what Trevor called the chariot that carries us into the next phase.
I love that. And to circle back to our opening question, maybe the best sex of your life is on the other side of menopause because it's the first time you're truly having sex for yourself, not for reproduction, not for validation, but purely for connection and pleasure.
So here's to cracks in the facade and the vagina. Laughs. Because when the old structures fall apart, that's when you get to build something real, something honest.
For our listeners approaching or experiencing perimenopause, remember Halle's message. You deserve care, you deserve pleasure, and most importantly, you deserve information.
And if your doctor diagnoses you with herpes when you're actually in perimenopause, you have my permission to send them a link to this podcast with the note: need a second opinion? Try listening first.
I'm Morgan Reeves.
And I'm Tessa Rourke. This has been Guts and Glamour. Until next time, remember, your worth isn't in your womb, it's in your wisdom.